Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I'm doing a bit of a disclaimer before we start this particular YouTube version of the live podcast. The last week we were spent upgrading all the audio equipment because it was dreadful beforehand. And we're running it through an audio mixer, and I might not have got the mixer quite right on last night's live podcast as I'm recording this now. So some of us at times are a bit quiet, sometimes we're a bit loud. You'll have to just sort of bear with it. This is the third time we've done this. It'll get better and better and better. I just wanted to give you a heads up because it possibly could be a bit annoying. Anyway, check it out. Let me know what you think. Leave comments below as usual. And I hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is currently going out on Twitch as a live stream on Sunday night. Some of you know, some of you don't know that we now, every Sunday, so far, so good, live stream at 8 o'clock. My shift pattern means that I can do 3 out of 4 on a Sunday and one's going to be a Monday. But basically, every single week, on a Sunday or a Monday, we're going to bring you a live stream. It's podcast type, so we're just going to chat hobby. We've got the guys in the chat on Twitch. We've got patrons who interact with us. We sort of stick the topic out to them about 24, 40 hours before, and they give us the topics. We talk about the topics on the live stream, and that's how it works. And these guys get to talk to us live as well. And then we'll put it up on YouTube 24 hours later as a sort of sit and talk stroke podcast. So we've done some hard work, some really hard work tonight, fixing the audio and fixing the visual. And there was going to be a nice fancy intro for Mikey from Hellstorm, and I've just chinned that off because it wasn't going well. So the video is going to start, and you're going to be there straight away. So screw it.
There we go.
So
everyone likes looking at my nice face, right? So.
It is beautiful. Yeah, it's pretty.
Some very
on my
strange
screen in
people
front of
out
me, it looks really, really ginger. But
was it? I said it's only the beard. That's the heritage there.
yeah.
Otherwise, we're all right.
So cool. So basically, we opened up the topic knowing that Mikey was coming on from Hellstorm, so we will welcome him. Hello, welcome Mikey from Hellstorm.
Hello, thank you for having me.
If you don't know who Mikey is, where have you been? Mikey runs a YouTube channel called Hellstorm Wargaming. They have a Twitch page, they have a premium website, they have all sorts. So check him out.
All the things.
All the things. Go give him a like and a follow and all that kind of stuff. And say hello to Mikey, tell him that we sent you. They do more competitive type stuff, I suppose, than we do, right?
Yeah, so we have a mix, but it is more towards the competitive side rather than like super narrative like you guys.
Yeah, there's been some more recent...
Don't hold back, do you?
No, they don't hold back.
No.
There's been some sort of more recent ITC type stuff going up, right? ITC practice
yes.
type stuff.
So with the lead up to the LVO or the Las Vegas Open, obviously they are the guys that run the ITC. We've basically been like kind of like jumping on that and making sure like people like are aware of it and what sort of list you might see at it, rather than just being like. Sometimes we like to take cool units, but sometimes we go, okay, this is what you're going to see at a tournament. Get ready.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's cool. So because Mikey's coming on and Mikey likes his tournament type stuff, and he's been, I mean, you've done all right in the ITC recently, right? Last year you were top Marine player in Europe or England or something like that.
No, so I'm quite high. I am currently top. I think I'm in the top 15 Marine players in the world currently. But I also haven't played Marines for about 6 months, and I don't think anyone else has, so I don't think that's a very good thing to shout about yet.
Yeah, because Marines are pants, right?
Yeah, so they are pretty pants. Like I played like Last Chance Open, Northwest Open, which are 2 quite large ITC events in the UK. But a lot of events these days are registered under the ITC that don't actually play the ITC rules pack, where you can still score points for that as well. So.
Okay, cool. So we thought having Mikey here with that sort of, I want to call it a pedigree, but I feel like I'm being too nice to you. But
it's definitely a pedigree.
Yeah, you reckon? Okay.
I think I should be Dr. ITC. Maybe.
19th. It's actually 19th.
Yeah, just when I'm around you.
Brom's called a bit of a lie and says you're actually 19th in the world.
19th. Okay.
19th in the
okay,
world
that's fine.
Adeptus
As I haven't played Marines competitively since July. So I'm still not doing too bad.
You said 15th, you lied to us. But still, he's definitely placed higher than any one of us 3, right?
Yeah.
That sounds like top 20.
I think I had
something.
5 or 6 figures when I played one game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, well, exactly. There you go. So he's definitely higher than us. So we figured that the ITC is a bit of an enigma to some people. And some people don't have a clue what the ITC is, what it means, what it stands for. So I figured if you were going to come on as a guest on the podcast, that could be a good topic to talk about, the ITC.
Yeah, sounds good. And again, Las Vegas Open is next week, so it's very topical on everyone's tongue at the minute. So.
Oh, yes.
And I have to try and edit this video together with the absolute mess we had at the start to make it go on YouTube fine. And look professional and be like it's about the ITC.
Yes.
Cool. So
very good round here. We've done this before, lots of times.
Yeah, lots of times. Looking professional. So we've got a list of topics. I'll show you. I've got a phone with a list of topics on it. Thank you very much, Simon, for subscribing with Twitch Prime as well. We've got a list of topics on it for the ITC. We're going to go through these topics. Like I said, what we did, we opened this up to patrons on Friday. So we said, this is our topic. What sort of questions do you want to ask? Because some people have come in with some questions. And we'll get to those eventually. But the first part we're going to get to is explain, what the first point I had is explain the ITC and what is it. So what is the ITC?
Okay, so a lot of people do get confused. So I'm going to explain two systems. There's the ETC and the ITC. So the ETC stands for the European Team Championships, which is a group of teams, guys that are all like voted in, and they've got like a bit of a council, and they run a type of system which is essentially like Eternal War and Maelstrom both together usually as a type of mission. So they play both missions at the same time. Whereas the ITC, or the International Tournament Circuit, is designed and run by Frontline Gaming. Do you know the US channel?
Yeah.
And they run, along with Best Coast Pairings, which is another company, they run their own type of event with their own rules pack, their own mission pack, which are completely different to anything you might have played before if you've played rulebook missions.
Yeah.
And essentially, every event that's run as ITC has basically every score every position that you get at an event, or well, at least the top 5 events you play, are put on a ranking system known as the ITC rankings. And basically, it's kind of like a system where people can play competitive events and see how they compare to other people, whether in their country, world, region, everywhere, or just in faction, like we mentioned.
Yeah, right. So it's important to note that they do take your top 5 scores, and but that doesn't mean you only have to play 5 events, right? You can play 15 events, and they'll take your top 5. So
certainly is. So they take. I can't remember the split now, so I do apologise. But they take the best position from the top 5 events. But I think it's because you have 3 different size events under the ITC. You have an RTT, or a Rogue Trader tournament, which is less than 32 players. You have a GT, which is 32 to 64 players, 63 players, sorry, and then 64 or over that is a major event. So depending what size event it is and your position, you get different points.
Yeah.
So like if you get first place in an RTT, so 24 players or less, you'll get a lot less points than you would if you call maybe top 5 a major tournament, because it kind of shows that skill level where in a 24-man event you might have come first, but in a major when there's like 120 people maybe, you've got a higher score because you've got a really good place in.
Yeah.
So it kind of reflects that. So.
And there's been some podcasts on there from Frontline Gaming. I think Mikey P picked up on it before, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereby they basically said that if you don't do a major, you won't place high.
No, exactly, because totally. You'd only get like top 3 maybe scores because they can only take so many from each type of event.
I think with the LVO being such a big event as well, if you don't go to the LVO, then you're missing out on some huge points for the ITC as well. So all the top players kind of have got to go to the LVO really if they want to place really highly for the season.
Yeah, exactly. So they're basically, I think. They're like, as I said, I've mentioned the 3 sides of the tournaments, but it also does depend on how many players actually attend.
Yeah.
So, like, for a major, you'll get so many points if it's 120 players, but, like, the LVO is 500, maybe. I'm not actually, it might even be more than that now.
It's over 700 now.
Well, there you go. Over 700. If you get first in there, your points will be massive. Yeah. Like, even if you've not played any other event, your points will be huge.
Yeah,
compared.
Just because of how many players there are.
You have to be the best, don't you, to win, because of the way that they go through the tournament.
What do you mean?
So they, after each game, you get re-ranked, and then they play the top 1st and 2nd play, 3rd and 4th play, 5th and 6th play, and then next go reorder you 1st, 2nd play, 3rd, 4th. So you have to be top winning all the time to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Swiss pairings. Is it Swiss pairings?
Yeah. Swiss pairing system. You also gain bonus points for the longer you keep up a streak at an event. So, like, if you win all your games, you'll get, like, a multiplier. But if you lose your first one and then win the other 4, you'll actually get less points because you lose the multiplier straight away, which is a lot of thing a lot of people don't realise.
So you can't submarine.
No, you can't submarine. You can't lose the first game. If you lose that first game, you'll have a lot less points than someone who wins like 4 games and loses the last one, because they'll have a 4 times multiplayer compared to you, which you won't have any multiplayer.
But what if you're like me and you lose 3 and then you win 1 and then you lose 1?
There's no hope, Liam.
Yeah, that's pretty much the truth of it, right?
That means you need to
hope.
go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first. That's ITC in a nutshell. So it's basically a sort of tournament scene. It's run by FLG. They've got the Best Coast. Do they run the Best Coast Pairings app?
No.
I think it's a separate company.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
So it's a different group. It's either a different group or it's a different company that runs that, but they do work very, very closely.
Exactly.
So
right, yeah.
they handle all of the rankings, whereas like FLG or the ITC run all the actual rules pack and stuff like that.
And now FLG do a thing called Signals from the Front Line, which is a weekly podcast, Mikey.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's on a Wednesday evening. Obviously, they're in the US, so if you're listening from the UK, the time zone might be. I think it's quite late compared to what. I think it starts at like 10 p.m. something our time.
But they also stick it out on YouTube and
on a Friday.
And they do put it out as a podcast as well.
Yeah, and they'll cover things like ITC rankings and who's top and talk about people's lists like Nick Nanovatis and people like that, or whatever you say.
Yeah. So obviously, they've been talking a lot about Mike Porter as well, who's a guy from the UK. I've known him a very long time. Really, really nice chap. But he's currently 2nd in the world.
He is,
So if he places better than Nick Nanovati, who won LVO last year, he'll probably be able to come home with the big prize and the big trophy and stuff.
And isn't Nick at the LVO running Orcs as well?
Certainly, he painted a 2,000 point Orc army in about 4 days. It was horrific.
Well, actually, what it was is Army Painter. They sponsored him. They painted it up for him. He didn't paint a single model, I think.
Oh, okay, even better.
Even better. They painted the whole army for him.
Because he's sponsored by them.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because it's like a sponsorship thing, exactly, yeah. So in some ways, he's like the first semi-pro Warhammer player.
That's cool.
Yeah,
There's
pretty cool.
sponsorship that paid for his army.
Yeah, nice. I was going to say, I should probably give a quick rundown of an ITC mission compared to a normal mission.
We're going to get to that.
Are we going to get to that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Can't wait.
You're going
I'm jumping the gun. I'm just very excited.
Oh, mate, yeah. I hope you've not got work tomorrow and no one else has, because this could be a long old podcast. We do tend to go off on tangents as well, as I'm sure you've probably seen in the past.
Yeah.
I certainly have.
And we'll talk about like Mikey's bald head and stuff. So the next, I've got little tick boxes. I'm going to tick the top box team. So the next one on this is how do ITC rankings work? So we've kind of covered this, right? How ITC rankings work.
Over.
So you score points based on your position in the tournament. The points are high depending on the size of the tournament, how many players are attending, etc. You get bonus points for runs and that sort of stuff. And then they take your top 5 scores from your year, and then you get an overall scoring. But that's not entirely it though, because this links into the next question, which says how do ITC factions work, and how do you establish your lead faction? And you had to do some research on this today, right?
I did, because I don't soup very much. It's not often when I actually do soup, so I had to go and double check how this worked. But essentially, what you do when you submit your list, you take the biggest detachment that you have, like in points, so the highest percentage, and that becomes your main ITC faction.
Right.
So let's say you've got 1,001 points of Imperial Knights and 999 points of Guard. You are still classed as Imperial Knights.
Okay.
So, for example.
And that's the lead faction that counts for your overall ITC ranking, right?
Yeah, so basically with the rankings, you can break it down with total placings, like anywhere in the world or just in your region or country. But then you can break it down to a faction specific. So you can say, how high am I, as we said, how high am I in the Space Marine faction, and so on, or like Eldar.
So you can be number 1 ITC player and play 5 different tournaments with 5 different armies, right?
Yes, you can.
And you'll be the best. You could be the best player.
Yeah.
But if you might have a different goal and you want to be the best Drukhari player or the best Harlequins player or whatever, and in which case you're better off playing 5 tournaments with that same faction.
Yeah, exactly. It depends what sort of goal you want for. If you want to go and try and be best in the actual game in the ITC ranking as a whole, you're probably going to need to change army to keep up with the meta. But if you want to say, I want to become best in faction of this specific codex or this specific, large detachment, if you do like to soup, then just play the same army and see how you do. Just keep playing all the events you can, get all the best placings you can, and it doesn't matter if you come last in your first event, but first in the last event you play before it resets. Then it'll take the best 5 scores.
Yeah, there are some lucky players, I guess, who choose a faction that they can play all the way through, like Archon Scari, just been Drukhari all the way through, and you think he's like 4th or 5th or something like that, and ITC at the moment. So if he places, really high, first, second, third, or something like that, he's in a really good shot of winning the ITC. And he's basically only played Yukari throughout. But
yeah, he's dropped on a really lucky codex there.
Yeah,
So
totally.
obviously Archon Scar is from Scarredcast, another YouTube channel.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he's smashing it as well. I'm pretty sure he's at least top 10 worldwide.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
Maybe higher.
I
So,
love the fact that Darren's asked
7.
this question, and I'm going to ask. We don't normally run questions straight in right now, whilst we're going through the basics, but I'm going to ask this question anyway, because it's such a Gwyn question, right? Does painting factor in your ITC score?
in the overall rankings, sadly not. It's nothing to do with hobby. It's pure gaming. It might affect your placing at a certain tournament if they want to have soft scores in, like it did for me at the Alliance Open in Amsterdam, where I came 5th because I dropped in painting score.
You're not bitter about
Instead
that
of-
at all, are you?
Not at all, because I didn't paint any squad markings, which isn't usual in the UK. But I didn't paint any squad markings, so I came 5th instead of 2nd. But whatever. Not salty,
Not
not sad
bad.
at all.
Cool.
So for those who don't know, Alliance Open is run over in
Netherlands.
Holland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
in
Dutch,
Amsterdam.
isn't it? There was Cease has been on the stream before. So check out Alliance Open.
It's
They've got a
pronounced
Facebook page.
Case. I got told off.
Case, is it?
Case Yom or CJ.
Oh, he's going to hate. Well, I'll just call him CJ. It's easier that way. And basically, part of their painting stipulations is that if you've got 2 different squads, they have to be marked so that you can tell they're 2 different
Yeah.
squads. And they don't really care how you do it. You can just paint the rim of the base, and they're okay with that.
You
Mikey
can put
didn't-
rubber bands on the model as well, just so you
they
know.
let you put rubber bands on, so you don't even have to paint it on. Mikey dropped points because he didn't do squad markings, and he would have probably been 2nd or 3rd. Instead, he was 5th.
I would have been 2nd. Just saying.
Yeah.
Know your tournaments, Mikey.
The thing is, it was quite funny because someone lent me some elastic bands, but I left him in the hotel.
Oh dear.
So it's beyond the joke, honestly.
if they do soft scoring, it can be quite good for you. So it's 0 to 42 points.
Not to 42 points on
on
soft score.
scoring for the painting. You can only get 0 if you don't do 3 colour minimum
What's that for?
for painting scores, and then
It
they
does-
times
it
by
does
the
depend
number
what
of rounds
event.
in the tournament.
It does depend what event, because
Yeah, it does.
for example, the Alliance Open, which is the event we're talking about, was you had a maximum of 25 points that were available to score, but they said that you could only score 20, but it only affected your actual positioning.
Okay.
It didn't really affect
I
like
think
the
Oh, it doesn't
actual.
go against it.
I
gaming
think Brom's
scores.
looking at the sort of generic ITC
Yeah, I am.
sort of soft score rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously
Okay.
each event then adapts that themselves. So some events will,
Sure.
will maybe place a higher emphasis on the soft score, some
Yeah.
not so much.
And it's
Yeah.
it's been pointed out in the chat there as well. There is an ITC hobby track, which
Oh,
you
really?
get a worldwide ranking as well. So the soft scores that Brom's talking about there, if they're tracked and then put in for each of the sort of tournaments and they submit their scores, you can go towards being the best hobbyist in the world.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you
Quite a
go.
lot of
I
points
apologise.
to do
That's
it.
not even something I was aware of.
Yeah, it's only
That
started
is because
this
I'm
year,
too
it's a new
hardcore of a
thing.
gamer, obviously.
We're all learning, Mikey.
Yeah.
We're all learning, mate.
Every day's a school day, yeah?
It's all about the dip game.
Yeah.
It's not really.
So the next big point, this is something that I think you're going to waffle on about for a while.
Okay.
But the next big point...
Is it about
we can't-
Leviathans?
Huh?
Is it about
We'll
Leviathans?
do a whole other podcast just about Leviathans for you.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
I thought that would be your most favourite one. So the next point that I wanted to bring up was how ITC missions are different from regular 40k missions. And you kind of started on that before, and I told you to stop.
You did.
We've
Okay.
got it here. So
Okay.
So 40k missions, you guys know. You've got Eternal War, Maelstrom. Some events will run a mix of the two. Some of them will use chapter approved missions. ITC is a completely different ball game, right?
Hmm.
And Mikey's going to tell us all about how they're different. Because
Okay.
I haven't got a clue. And I'm coming to your
So-
event soon, and you're running ITC missions, and I haven't got a clue what
This-
I'm doing.
This one is ITC, yeah. So I like to think, a lot of people like to say that rulebook missions are better than ITC or ITC is better than this, but I like to think of it as like just more missions that you can play.
Yeah.
But it kind of takes 40k very basic, if that makes sense. Whereas there's essentially a scoring system of 0 to 42. And how you score these points are each turn, you can, if you kill a unit, you score a point, and if you hold an objective, you score a point. And at the end of each battle round, if you killed more units than your opponent, you get another point, and if you hold more objectives than your opponent, you get a 4th point. And then each scenario has a special bonus point, which is different. I said it's different between. So one of them might be like hold every objective to score a point, and there might only be like 3 objectives on the board. So that's 5 points you can score every battle round, An ITC always plays 6 battle round, so that's 30 points as a total there.
Okay.
Then what you do, before the actual game starts, you choose 3 secondary missions. And essentially, there's a list of these in the ITC Champions Rules Pack, which if you do want to have a look, you can just Google ITC Champions Pack and it'll come up straight away. Or you can go on the Frontline Gaming website to find it through there. You choose 3 secondaries, which are suited to either how your army plays, how your opponent has built their army, or how you've built your army as well. So a lot of common ones are things like recon, which is have a unit in every corner of the board, or every quadrant of the board at the end of your turn, and you score a point for that. Or it might be like the Reaper, which is kill 20 models. So you basically keep a tally of how many models you've killed. Doesn't matter what unit it's from. Every time you kill 20, you get a point. And there's other ones like Old School, which gives you your traditional secondaries back, which is First Strike, Warlord, Linebreaker, and then they play Last Strike as well, which is kill a unit in the last battle round. So you choose 3 secondaries, and each one of those you can score 4 times. So that'll give you another 12 points. So that's how you score. That's the maximum how you can score. There's 42 points available, 5 from the every turn ones, and then there's 3 secondaries which you choose per game. So you either have to build to play those secondaries, or you have to build so your opponent can't play those secondaries, if that makes sense.
Kind of. Yeah,
you can play to score and play to deny at the same time.
Which massively affects the list building stage as well, right? Because you're not only thinking about the secondaries that you're going to want to play with your list, but you're also thinking about what secondaries you're going to stop your opponent getting. So some Horde players might be put off running loads and loads and loads of Guardsmen and Orcs and stuff because they'll give away Reaper, possibly quite easily.
Yeah, exactly. It's something you've got to really consider when you're actually preparing for an event. Like if you're going to take Imperial Knights, then people are going to choose Titan Slayer, which is best. I think it's something like take 8 wounds from a Titanic model and you'll get a point. And they obviously that makes like every knight's worth 3 points then, which is really, really bad. So you don't really want to be taking, if you're going to be taking pure knights, you want to be kind of thinking about what secondaries you can then not let your opponent score as well. But yeah, so list building is really crucial in ITC. It does sometimes affect how you build stuff. Like say you're going to take, Eldar, and you want to take loads of infantry, but then you want to take some tanks as well. You might only take 3 tanks, so that if they choose Big Game Hunter, which is kill a unit with more than 7 wounds, I believe, because it used to be 10, so I think it's 7 now.
With monster and vehicle.
Yeah, so monster or vehicle with more than 7 wounds, then you might not take all 4, because you then, at least if they do choose that, there's only a maximum of 3 points available to stop your opponent scoring. So it's a lot of thought to be asked to put into it, but also you can just go, I don't care, and we'll see what happens.
And you pick your secondaries for each game?
Every game, yeah.
So it's not like some of the events where they say pick a psychic power, pick a warlord trait, and that's what you've got for this whole event. This is you rock up to the table, you see your opponent, you then pick your secondaries.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what usually makes the missions quite interesting, because they say ITC has 6 scenarios, but the missions are basically the same, because it doesn't matter what mission you're playing. You're always trying to kill units. You're always trying to hold objectives. The bonus point is different for every scenario, but essentially you're playing the same game every time.
Yeah.
There's not any special rules that usually happen like you would find in Eternal War or Maelstrom. So it's essentially kill units, hold objectives, but then the secondaries really make the game different, because it depends what you're playing against. Okay. So there's not 6 missions, there's 6 objective placements. That's what I'd say.
So it's a lot more of a level playing field. And we do tend to see as well that some of the bigger events are also quite keen on level playing field as far as scenery is concerned. And
sure.
And there's kind of a scenery template, right, for how it should look as well, I think, if I remember rightly.
Some events do have the preset terrain, on every table, it'll be exactly the same. The ITC doesn't enforce that. What they do enforce usually is they have 3 extra terrain rules, which kind of make it a bit more interesting. Or a lot of people don't like it. There's some controversy around it. But the main one that pretty much every event I've played in the past 6 months does adopt is the bottom level of any multi-level ruin blocks line of sight, even if there are windows or doors already there. You kind of pretend that it's already blocked off. Because the problem is with GW terrain, a lot of company terrain like Game Mat and stuff like that, they make awesome terrain. I'm not going to criticize that at all, but there's lots of windows in.
Yeah.
So you have lots of terrain, but every model can, because you choose any point in the model to shoot anything, then every model can see every unit on the table. So it's like almost like you're not playing terrain, you're just basically gaining the cover save off it, which usually doesn't make too much of a difference.
No, yeah, and it does, yeah. So I haven't really ever played that rule, but I can see how it would make a massive difference if the bottom level of ruins blocks line of sight.
Yeah, so it also makes it easy for the event organizer, because if they don't have a lot of terrain that blocks line of sight naturally, they can just go, well, now it does.
Yeah.
So it's good on for the organizer as well.
Yeah.
Did I read something? I read something. It might have been in the simplified ones and may not have applied to the champion ones, but can objectives still be on higher levels?
No, so that's another rule they're doing for us as well. So all objectives have to be on the ground floor as well. So you can't have them on top of buildings and stuff like that, which is good. I actually quite like that rule, because if you're a pure knight player and your opponent goes, well, all 5 objectives are on top of buildings, you go, okay, cool, good game. Well done.
Yeah, but that... Right, okay. There was an incident. I will talk about it. There was an incident that happened on Visicast before John stopped producing battle reports. And I turned up with Eldar, and I had jet bikes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, he places 3 objectives, I place 3 objectives. He took Ravenwing, okay?
Yeah.
So he had flyers who couldn't hold objectives, and bikes who can't go up into ruins. So so I placed my 3 objectives up on ruins. What was the first thing you think John said? Don't be a dick.
Yeah,
and I'm
exactly.
like, hang on a minute. So this is, for me, this is where your list building has let you down, because you cannot take an objective that's on top of a ruin. So why should I be punished because your list doesn't allow you to capture those objectives? That's part of your choice in taking lists that can't climb objectives or ruins or terrain. And I honestly believe that only placing objectives on the ground floor, I'm not entirely sure. I think that's a positive move, because people that are playing pure knights or playing pure Ravenwing bikes or whatever, surely there should be some sort of nerf for choosing to take that kind of list, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about
that. So it is a valid tactic when you're allowed to do it, because it's something that I do as well, right? If you've got jump units and they don't, then you're going to use that to your advantage.
Yeah, 100%.
The problem is with, like, again, the ITC, I think the reason they brought that in is because all the objective placements are preset. You don't randomly place them yourself. They are all placed a certain position on the board, depending what scenario you're playing. But also, it kind of creates like what I like to think is like a non-interactive situation. Whereas John has got he's got 6 Black Knights that live they'll just decimate Wind Riders for days. But you put your Wind Riders in a good position on an objective where they can't be seen. And then it's kind of like he's just like stuck there, not being able to do anything while you might be racking up points.
Yep.
And sometimes it can sound like it can like leave a sour taste in an opponent's mouth. So I think they've tried to avoid that as much as possible and try and keep it again like literally like a level playing field, because it's all on bottom, right? So yeah, I agree with you how it's like kind of like they should have prepared for that, but also at least if someone does rock up to the table, they're not going to be like, oh well, that guy's just jumped on top of a building and because he rolled higher than me to place an objective.
Yeah, it kind of removes a possible situation where someone cannot win because someone else has just done something in the pre-deployment even.
But that's kind of their choice for the list they've built though. So like I've taken the Eternal Slaughter on numerous occasions. I've taken them to events, and I went to an event with them where I came up against 3 Eldar Flyers, 2 Hemlocks, and a Crimson Hunter. There's nothing I could do against that.
Yeah.
And I accepted that at my list building stage, when the only thing I probably had that could do any sort of damage to flyers was a single Helldrake, and let's face it, they're pretty pants in 8th edition. I accept the fact that if I come up against a hard number of flyers, nothing I can do against those, and I have to play a different game.
Yeah, well, I guess when it's your tournament, you can do the rules you like,
yeah,
can't
exactly,
you?
Yeah.
So
when I'm running an ITC registered event,
it's yeah. I mean, I get your point, but I think it's kind of moot, really.
Yeah, so we'll chuck a couple of the comments. One of them's just said, you can't complain if you take a knife to a gunfight and get shot. This is what I mean. If you don't prepare when you go there, I honestly, that's my honest opinion. And people have stated that Jack B has said your list has to be strong, but be able to cater for the max amount of scenarios. And that's where I think, for me personally, someone who's taken, for example, a pure Ravenwing list who can't go up into ruins and can't take objectives, he's not at the list building stage preparing himself to be able to take on any army in any situation.
Yeah, well, certainly that list building stage is very relevant for this particular LVO that's coming up because they've introduced the magic boxes.
Magic boxes. Oh yes, that's
So-
Magic
that new rule.
boxes.
I'll let Mikey describe what that is if he likes.
So they've been dubbed the magic boxes, but what the ITC have kind of brought in is what's known as enclosed ruins. So obviously they have rules for multi-level ruins which block line of sight, but an enclosed ruin is essentially like it's described as a four-walled ruin with a roof. So it's quite literally a box, right? So you tend to have a lot of these if you use a lot of like MDF terrain. Like a lot of companies make like little like crate-like houses and stuff like that, or factories or whatever. Essentially, what they've done is, if you have fly in a normal rulebook mission or a normal rulebook game, there's nothing stopping you moving onto a box-like ruin and then dropping onto the lower ground and hiding completely out of line of sight. And what this creates is, again, the non-interactive situation where you might have, let's be nice, a guard infantry, let's say a Farseer on jet bike, because this is a crucial one. So if you have a Farseer on a jet bike, and he flies onto this magic box and drops onto the bottom level, now you can't touch it, you can't see it, you can't target it, you can only target it with maybe indirect fire. And it's a bit rubbish because also things can't charge it either. Like Imperial Knights can just literally can't touch you at all. They just have to walk around the magic box and wait for you to come out, which you're not going to do. But if you have the infantry keyword, because you can pass through walls, you can still move through there. But if you have the fly, but without the infantry keyword, you can't get in. Essentially, what people were doing was using things like shining spears as Yannari. They was kind of like putting them in magic boxes before they got the magic box dub. And they were placing them at the bottom and then flying out and then flying back in. There was also a situation at Nova, which is another big US tournament, where people were flying like Hemlocks and Crimson Hunters over boxes and then saying they were dropping down to the lower level and hiding flyers in there, which is just ridiculous. I think someone did it on like a little pipe. They had like a little like a pipe maybe like 3 inches diameter, like up in the air. They went, okay, I'm going to drop onto the lower level.
What's wrong with
And they
that?
couldn't really argue against it. They just said they're on the ground floor.
That's
Yeah.
I would want to punch him in his gentleman's region. If he
There was
did
a
that
lot
to
of
me.
arguments, I will say
Yeah,
that.
that was, oh my god. And I mean, you've made the active decision in your event coming up in April to sort of not do that, right?
Yeah, so with the non-interactive thing, it's fine for the thing is you can get in it with like mortar teams and stuff like that, and you can still shoot out, even though you've got no way of shooting out because there's no windows, and even if you did, the count is blocked because it's ITC. But also you can have really horrible stuff like grotesques, which are really strong Dark Eldar unit at the minute. They're really, really popular, but also they're infantry, but they're huge. So they can get into the magic boxes and hide completely out of line of sight, can't get charged, and then they just pop out when they need to. So I've added a rule called the floor is lava, so anything that counts as a magic box is actually impassable. You can get on top of it, but you just can't get inside. No unit can, not even infantry.
Seems fair.
Yeah, and it's really good because you can make nice terrain. You can make big boxes which block line of sight really well, but you can't have people abuse them and run through them. So,
But with the magic boxes being at LVO, there's been quite a big hoo-ha in the last sort of couple of months. People writing their lists who've got to get them submitted by a couple of weeks ago, and complaining that, oh, I've got a case of these magic boxes, what am I going to do? My army doesn't have a mortar team or an SMS system or whatever to do indirect line of fire. And yeah, people having to tailor their lists. So you get people who submit a list and it's like as many mortar teams as I could possibly fit. Because I think magic box is going to be a massive issue.
I think magic boxes will be a massive issue.
Well, they're only on about maximum third of the tables. So you go through the whole tournament without ever seeing one.
Yeah. I guess.
It's
also terrain that FLG makes on magic boxes, but that's by the by.
Yeah.
That's another issue entirely.
I don't know what you're saying there.
So,
purely coincidence, I'm sure.
Whilst we're talking about this controversial type thing, this sort of rule that's been introduced by FLG for ITC events, it's not a GW rule, it's not a 40k rule in general. I mean, we have seen things that the FLG have brought in, like First Strike, that Games Workshop are now employing.
Yeah,
that's really annoying because Brom's tapping on his computer to my right.
Sorry.
We have
I've got loud keys.
And you've got a lapel mic, so be careful. We have seen things like that have been introduced by FLG that Games Workshop have been taken on, right? Like First Strike, because it's positive.
Well, they're playtesters.
I can't see Magic Box becoming a generic 40k rule, and I actually can see I can see FLG making big changes to it because I think it's too abusable. Andy Byrne in the chat has said a lot of this is why I'm not attracted to the real ITC style competitive scene I don't want to be frustrated by things like this when I play. I will say that these sorts of things aren't common. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Michael will correct me, but I don't think they're common. I think you just hear about them more because they're the controversial things, right?
What I was going to say is that one of the things that recent Frontline Gaming says time and time again in Signals and Frontline, all the stuff they send out is read the mission pack. Because what happens is people don't read the mission pack, then they turn up and they're surprised by it, and then they get butthurt because they didn't know they need to do this thing. Oh, now it's an auto lose, and I spent all this money going to Las Vegas for this tournament, and now I can't possibly win.
Yeah.
So it all gets blown out of proportion quite a bit.
It does.
And I think for other events, like the ITC doesn't say you have to run these terrain rules. It's just it's a guidance. It's a set of guidance. So
guidelines.
Guidance.
Yeah, and the case in point, Mikey's running his own Enter the Hellstorm 2 event.
Into the Hellstorm 2.
Into the I don't care. He's running his own event in April, wherever it is, and you've chosen not to use it. And that's the key. That's the key, right? They've got all these, like Bron was talking earlier about the how many soft score points you can score. That's just guidelines, so you can make up your own. And some events place confrontation events that we played down on the South Coast. Ricky puts a heavier emphasis on soft score because he wants it to be more about the all-round hobby and less about just sort of dick kicking lists and being as powerful and as strong as you can be. So he's really keen on the soft score stuff. So you can still be ITC and play ITC events and not suffer these sort of nuances that occur every now and again. And you can avoid some of these rules that you think are silly. And TOs like Mikey will go, don't like that magic box malarkey. Get rid of it.
And I think people do, as I say, get butthurt by that sort of stuff. But also they think that the ITC is trying to tell people how to play the game.
Yeah.
Nope.
And it's just not the case.
It's just guidelines, right? That's the key. It's just this is how
you can be. I was going to say you can be an ITC event and not even play ITC missions. I said like the Alliance Open is an ETC event, but they still submit their scores to the ITC because it's just a general tracking system. So, which is something interesting to know.
And if
but
you
the
are,
ITC
the other thing I do like about ITC because it's encouraged things like the Best Coast Pairings app, and there's that website, Mikey, that you found, isn't there, Mikey P?
Yes.
What's it called?
4kstats.com.
4kstats.com. That's the one. I like that that's been born out of ITC as well. Because I like statistics and I like to analyse stuff. And 40kstats.com, along with Best Coast Pairings app, will give you so much data, you couldn't read it all in a month, right? There's so much data on there.
Well, Brom's been looking at it as well.
It's a little too much.
It's a lot to get through. And I think what I've done is, Frontline Gaming, we've mentioned them a lot, but they also do a Chapter Tactics podcast where...
Yeah, it's really good.
That. Yeah, he chats through all the stuff with Val Heffelfinger and various other guys. And they break those scores down so you can get a bit of understanding. So the two in tandem, if you listen to the podcast and then you look at the stats on the website, you can get a lot more sense out of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can get really confused about the primary, secondary, the percentage of number of lists, number of detachments.
Yeah.
The T-whip.
It could be a minefield, right?
Yeah,
I don't know what T-whip is even now.
No, me neither.
No idea. Cool. Okay, so we've kind of roughly covered, I think, sort of what ITC is about and how it sort of works roughly. I would kind of... I was massively sort of daunted by ITC for ages. Like, I kind of thought, this isn't me, this is for hardcore tournament players. And then I went to a couple of events who said, what's your email address for ITC? Or, what's my what? And it turns out that they were just normal events, and yet they were ITC registered. So,
and that was how Liam got his first email address.
Yeah.
Ah, cute.
And you don't have to go to if you wanna be top scorers in the ITC, you are gonna have to look at things like the LVO and what have you. But you don't have to do those, right? You don't have to do your London GTs and your LVOs. There's plenty of ITC events. You can hit the Best Coast Pairings app and search for events. It's amazing because you're on Best Coast Pairings, right?
Yeah, so our event's going to be using it as well, but it's a really good app. I think they have a subscription service. I think it's like £5 a month or $5 a month or something. And you can actually look at any event that's happened through their app, and you can actually look at everyone's list and stuff like that, which is really good. So you might hear like an event where someone's won with Space Marines. You can go, oh my God, what the hell was he using? And go and have a look. Doesn't matter if it was like a year ago or anything like that. But it doesn't matter. I say you don't have to be like super like, oh, I want to become best in faction, or I want to be best in the world or something like that. You can just compete with your friends. You know, if you're all going to the same events, it's a really good way to keep track of like who's won which event, who's done better than each other in events, and just keep actually, like like a friendly competition between your buddies. So
it's apparently the way that they're going to be submitting lists as well. So some of these bigger events is you have to use Best Coast Pairing to submit your list.
Yeah.
Well,
Turn up with your laminate all you want, but if you haven't submitted it online, you actually could lose points.
I kind of really encourage that. Because the thing is, Best Coast Pairings, I mean, Mikey's right, you can pay a subscription service if you want to go on Best Coast Pairings and look at all the historic data. And there's loads of it. I've looked at it. There's loads of it.
It's even more mind-boggling than 40k stats, though, isn't it?
But otherwise, it's free to submit your lists and use it for the events. Why wouldn't you?
And one of the things they're doing, so you said they've got to submit it via the BCP app because I think they've got a set format now that you fill your list out in. And that means that they can run a program to basically just crawl through all the lists, rip out all the information, and they can get all the stats down to the unit level. So you can see how many of each unit was taken in each tournament. You know, and all that sort of stuff, and how well armies with certain units did, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, Mikey's waving at people in his house.
Is he?
My housemate just came in.
So I'm trying to listen to you talk intelligent about 40k, and Mikey's just there waving on the camera, like pretending he's got friends and stuff.
Sorry, just don't invite him back.
There's more people in his life than the three of us. That's what he's trying to get at. And it's just rubbish, isn't it?
Stop showing off.
I do actually live in a green box, just people don't realise.
Yeah, that's what I mean. When we finish this podcast, we're going to shut the cupboard doors on you, and you'll wait till the next time we'll invite you out, right?
Yeah. I do live in the shed with Elliot, so there you go.
He does care. Andy H. He said he's waving at us because he cares. He does care. He does care. That's true. Right. So we've kind of covered the basics of it. I would encourage people to give it a bash and go and check it out and have a look at the pack. It's not that frightening, and unfortunately, as with anything in the world, when you hear negative press, that's the stuff that gets blown up really, really quickly.
So much in 40k as well.
Yeah, so when you hear things about the Magic Box being a problem, or some of the things that have been going on, things like the LGT last year, or the finals of certain events that are live streamed and people are caught cheating, that will get blown massively out of proportion. It's not the norm. But now we've covered that, when we decided we were going to talk about not the LGT, the ITC, like I said to you guys, what we did is we opened it up to Patreon. So now we're going to move on to Patreon-specific questions. A lot of them, Mikey, are like putting you on the spot.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we need a spotlight that comes on your head right now. So, perfect. So the first one...
right head.
this is interesting. The first one is, how balanced is the ITC and what's the spread of winning factions? Like John Battle in Discord asked us that, one of the Warhammer patrons. So basically, what he was alluding to was in 7th edition, there were some dominating factions, right? So Eldar kicked everyone's arse.
Yeah.
Tau kicked most people's arse. So what he's asking is that the same in ITC? Is there a better balance now?
I think with the way that the rate that new codexes are coming out do affect the game as a whole, and they do actually affect the ITC as a whole as well. Currently, the minute Drakari are super strong, but they are just strong in general. It's not just in an ITC type mission. There's some armies that do really well in ITC, and there's some that don't do so well. For example, as you mentioned, Tau do a lot of butt kick. Used to do a lot of butt kicking, but in ITC they actually quite struggle because they don't move very much, and obviously. Every turn you're trying to capture objectives and hold more than your opponent, which they do struggle with. And usually the bonus points are usually like hold objectives and stuff like that. So that's like 3 points a turn that you might start to struggle with a Tau army. Whereas like things like Drakari that have loads of staying power, and they're usually backed up with Eldar, which moves super fast. So sadly, Eldar are actually really good at ITC because they've got lots of good staying power, even though they're supposed to be glass cannons, and they move really fast.
Because they're the master race, right? That's why.
Well, yeah, it's usually the case, to be fair, sadly. So
when they soup as well, they can easily cover the drawbacks of the individual codex as well. So Drakari with a Supreme Command attachment of a Farseer and 2 Warlocks gets all the nice Eldar tricks and that, while still getting all the good units from Drakari codex. So.
Yeah, and then you've got the dirty filth, which is sort of design natural filth, which is things like Yunari, and there's no one out there that I know who's a big enough penis to take Yunari to a tournament.
They are
there Mikey from Hellstorm Wargaming.
Yunari are actually quite bad in ITC because you put so many points in killing stuff, so you usually want to take Drakari instead. Just saying.
61% win ratio,
which I also have. Just saying.
Brom has got 40k stats up in front of him with all the ITC.
Right, so let's pause. Let's put a pin in that for a minute. So Mikey from Hellstorm, our expert on ITC. You go quiet for just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Mikey Brom, who has the highest win percentage at 40kstats.com and ITC?
The highest faction is Yunari.
Yunari.
Yeah. And then Drakari, and then Harlequins.
Yeah, so Yunari has the highest win percentage. Would you say Drakari second?
Yeah, as a
Harlequins
faction,
third.
You can break that down in chapter within that, or
So like
so-
like a Craftwild type.
yeah, that. So the chapters within that. So mixed Drakari is top of Drakari, but Yunari is above that.
Andy Byrne, yes, I would take Yunari in battle reports and narrative reports and stuff. I wouldn't take them to a tournament, I don't think.
I mean, I think it is a
That's
sort of
worse.
constantly evolving thing, I would say, and I think that
It's got worse.
since the summer, Yunari has been the highest win percentage, but I think since chapter approved, they've dropped slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you filter it back, so it was only in the last sort of couple of months, they're not quite as
But-
dirty as they have been, but I think they are still top.
But what's the key thing that's coming for them? Codex.
Well, we don't know if they're going to get Codex. It's not been announced.
They'll get a Codex. Yunari are still.
Might just be in White Dwarf, though. You don't know, do you?
Yeah, well.
It could be a White Dwarf one. Can you imagine?
Could
£4
be, yeah.
for Yunari Codex. Everyone will have one.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh, don't say that. No.
it'll just be a big old dirty.
You want to make
nerf
it about
thing, won't
100 quid.
it? Yeah.
That's horrendous.
But that doesn't factor in also one the Castellan and the Loyal 32. That's also an incredibly powerful list.
Yeah.
Yunari is.
It's going to do well
top.
at the LVO as well.
Top.
So this is the thing. So I will, if I'm going to draw us back to John's question about how balanced is ITC, ITC doesn't really have any. It's got exactly the same drawbacks and issues that standard 40k's got for balance.
Completely
100%.
agree.
Yes.
Apart from the fact that, arguably, I would say that some of the factions that are a little bit unbalanced in standard 40k because they're very good are even more unbalanced in ITC because they can score in every single way that they need to be able to score. With objectives,
Yeah.
So Eldar and Drakari stuff with their objectives, their stay in power, their ability to kill stuff, can score in both primary, secondaries, and all that kind of stuff. Some of the armies that suffer in normal 40k, like Tau, like Mikey said, Tau who can't go and capture objectives, they suffer even worse in ITC because of how much emphasis there is in each round in capturing objectives.
I mean, I think Tau, they do suffer even worse in ITC. I think in general 40k, Tau are still pretty competitive, but ITC does hamper them a little bit.
So ITC arguably then we're saying there's worse balance.
I wouldn't
Potentially.
look like it.
I wouldn't-
The soups can make it look really, really unbalanced because you can't soup Tau with anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
There we
that's
go.
true. That's true.
So
However, sorry, go on.
So everything else, sorry, Mikey, the Imperial Knights, Astra Militarum, your Drakari, and all the Elders are all up there. It just depends on which one's your primary list. Then it
Exactly.
can look really high.
Which is a big issue with the stats.
So this
Yeah.
is where we come on to a whole different question, which Dylan asked for. I'll find it. What's Mikey's thought? Because this kind of links now with what we're talking about with balance. Dylan says, what's Mikey's thoughts on soup lists? What does he think could be a fix in the long run? And this is where I think the balance from 40k in general, we've talked about it so many times, and I'll continue to bang on about it until they actively try and fix it. The big issue with balance for me in 40k and ITC and all these kind of different things is soup. You've just said it yourself. All the top factions on 40kstats.com are all armies that can soup. Simple as
Yeah.
that.
Thousand Sons are third in win ratio.
Yeah.
Thousand Sons are good. I don't know who would try and take those.
You're going to take them on their
in
own?
a tournament, yeah. Yeah, it's pure Thousand Sons. But they
Yeah.
can soup.
They can.
So one of the ways Thousand Sons are made strong is with horror spam with them and stuff like that. To use as screening units to kick
Zangor
out lots of
bombs.
cheap
Sangor bombs.
or hitting flamer type things, Zangor bombs. I mean, Zangors are still
Like
mono
Legion
faction strictly.
cultists.
Yeah, Legion cultists, etc. So,
So, sorry, I am interested to hear your thoughts on soup, Mikey. And do you think that is something that needs fixing? And if you have an idea of how you do that?
I think soup is a problem. I don't think overall it is good for the game. Because there isn't a balance of codexes. Every codex is different, especially with the way GW as a company works. It has to sell models. That's what it does to make a living. So every codex, there is a natural codex creep, and then they tend to like reel it back with like things like chapter approved, and then they kind of like throw bones with stuff like Vigilus Defiant. You know, the new formations and stuff like that. The specialist detachments. So overall, whilst there's no codex balance, I think soup's going to be a problem because you have an army that struggles to do something like Drakari, let's say like the Coven stuff. Again, I'm really into Drakari at the minute. That's why I talk about them a lot.
because they're really strong, right? In their second.
And they are, yeah. You know, I'll be honest. I bought the Drakari on because it's really strong. So I'll be straight up like you know, I do really like the Coven stuff. I think the old models are awesome and stuff like that. But they're also really strong, so it's kind of like a double selling point. But like, you've got that sort of army which is really slow. It doesn't die, but it's got good movement, but not really good. But then you can soup it with stuff like just normal craft worlds with all your wave serpents that can just move super fast, and your hemlocks which are really good flyers. So it's kind of like, I think it's bad for the game, but also with armies that struggle like Imperial Guard or Imperial Knights and stuff like that, it's really good. But again, that's the problem with the codexes, not really like anything else, because some armies are really good already that can soup, and there's some armies that are okay that can soup that make them a little bit horrific. The way I change it personally, I look at the approach that AOS has taken, where you can take allies but only up to a certain amount of points. So in a 2,000 point game, you can take 400 points of allies, which I think is actually a lot better system. But also, they don't really get any benefits for being in there, because AOS has detachment army benefits. If you are pure, like for example, Nighthaunt, you get special stuff like your entire army can deep strike and stuff like that. But if they're an ally, they don't get that. So I think if you're going to fix soup without completely just saying no soup, which I think's also bad, because as I said, some armies do struggle in some areas, then I think that's probably going to be the best way. So, limit how much you can soup.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you say about iOS is interesting as well, because the new GC Occults Codex have come out. You can take Astra Militarum units, but they basically don't get any of the bonuses that they would
There
get
was a discussion about this today, actually.
Militarum.
There was a chat on one of the WhatsApp groups, on the 40k Keeping in Touch WhatsApp group we've got. They were asking the question. So if you read the rule, it says they don't gain any of the regimental benefits, and they can't use things like regimental orders, and then it has a list. And the discussion was, would Gene Stealer Cult Lima Russ battle tanks still have tank orders? Yeah, I think.
The question is, well, until we've all got the codex and we've had an FAQ 2 weeks later, because you know the codex probably isn't finished yet. We won't know, sadly. You know, it's a low blow, but let's be serious. It always happens.
Yeah, totally. That's what they have to do.
It's fine, you know. I don't mind. I'm just prepared for it. You know.
Yeah, that's why they have the 2-week FAQ. You know, because they want it to go out there and people to bitch and moan about all the stuff that's wrong, so they can fix it in an FAQ.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather that than it be stuck all the time. I'd rather a piece of paper 2 weeks later.
It's a sensible approach, really.
So for ages, Mikey and I sat on podcasts and chats talking about how we'd fix soup. We had lots of different suggestions and scenarios. Actually, having heard you talk previously about the Age of Sigmar fix, I think it's probably one of the more elegant fixes, and probably one of the easier ones. Andy H has said in the chat, and he's right, killing soup is bad for the game for a couple of reasons. You've already touched on one, Mikey, where you said that some factions do kind of need it to cover gaps, massive gaps they've got. I'm a little bit sort of like, well, if you've chosen to pick a faction that's got that gap, tough. I think personally, in my own opinion, that every faction should have a shortfall somewhere.
Yes,
so
I totally agree.
They should have a thing they're good at and maybe a thing that they're bad at. And that way, when you pick your faction, I mean, of course, across the multiple factions you've got in 40k, it's hard to make every faction good at something different to another faction, and every faction bad at something different. I mean, so that's really tough to do, and I'm not saying they should have done that, but I like the fact that if I pick a certain army, I might have a gap that I can't plug, and I'll have to learn to play with that weakness.
Yeah, and that's you hope that in a balanced game, it's going to be a sort of rock paper scissors sort of format where one thing kills something, but it gets killed by something else, and everything's got that kind of things it's going to get things it's bad against. But that's just really difficult to balance.
Yeah,
and
of course it is.
Soup makes that very hard.
Yeah,
but
that's the issue, as I said, with like codex balance, right? Because every codex isn't balanced, so there are lots of shortfalls, and they can be easily fixed by soup. I think probably the one that could do is soup, but doesn't. It kind of shows how a codex could be balanced is Tau, because obviously they can't take allies, but they are bad in combat, right? But their shooting phase is absolutely horrific. Compared to other armies, they outshoot every other army really, except for maybe like Guard, for example. But that's kind of an example of how an army can be bad in one phase that doesn't need soup because it excels at another phase, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
I'm waiting for the inevitable White Dwarf Kroot Codex.
That'll be the day.
That'll fix them and make them amazing, right?
Yeah, totally.
So
it could happen.
It could happen, I suppose. And as some of the people in the chat have already touched on, Andy H, Andy Byrne, I've already sort of touched on in the Twitch chat, is that actually soup is good for narrative as well.
Yeah,
I
totally
mean,
agree.
you read 40k novels, you read 40k narrative. Soup is a thing. It happens. I mean, you're more likely to see Imperial Guardsmen working with Space Marines, working with the Inquisition, than you are to see necessarily Crafold Elder working with Drakari in the narrative. And yet, on tabletop, we tend to see Crafold Elder and Drakari more often than we see Space Marines Imperial Guards.
Exactly.
But there is narrative reasons for it, and that's something that I think we need to keep, that narrative aspect for me, because that's what we're about more than tournament stuff, right? Totally, that narrative. So I'm keen we don't lose that, but I do think for tournament play, the thing is though, you could kind of introduce a tournament-based soup rule that doesn't hurt narrative play or open play.
This is it, and match play changes, you know?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we've kind of touched on that one. And this is a tedious link directly into the next question. This is going too well. John B asked another question. Basically said, would Mikey from Hellstorm, who's into the tournament scene and has been for a while, would he be interested in seeing a tournament-specific rules pack from GW? So we kind of have this tournament-specific rules pack in the form of the ITC rules pack that you can download. Do you want one from Games Workshop, separate to the main rulebook, separate to narrative, match, and open play? They've started to kind of do it with the chapter-approved little bolt-ons for in organised events, I think they call it, or organised play. So do you want GW to produce an actual tournament pack?
100% yes, because it'd fix all the issues. Because the problem is there's obviously you've got FLG doing ITC, you've got the ETC doing their thing, and then you've got like the only real official GW tournament, which is Warhammer World.
Yeah,
they're doing their own thing as well, and they don't really line up because you've got the ITC which wrote their own pack with their own missions. You've got the ETC playing 2 missions at the same time, and then you've got Warhammer World doing whatever. I'd much prefer to see a standard rules pack from GW, so everyone will pretty much follow it, because it's like, you've got the ITC, it's really good. A lot of people see flaws in it, and they don't have to follow it because it's just some random YouTube channel, Twitch channel that releases pack. And you got the same issue with the ETC. You've just got a bunch of lads, a bunch of blokes or whatever who run that, and it's kind of like, why do we have to follow them? We'll just do our own thing. So that's why you have lots of different events running different rules packs, because there's no real set standard one. Whereas there's two places that are trying to be that, but it's not GW, so people don't always follow it. Whereas if GW did release their own, then pretty much everyone would follow that one. Everyone would be on the same page. You'd have a lot more. What's a good word for it? They do like you got 40kstats.com, you got BCP and stuff like that.
Use your words, Mikey.
I'm northern. I don't use words. I just like to make noises at people.
It's like to grunt and eat gravy
and eat pie.
Yeah, you'd have the stats sheet that you get from events. It'd be a lot more
consistent.
I can't think of this. Yeah, that's it. Consistent stats, because every event can do whatever they like. There you go. Thank you, man. The ITCs are the guidelines, the ETCs are the guidelines, and GW are just normal rulebook missions, just rulebook missions. So all these stats are really good, but they're all from different events with different builds and stuff like that. So it kind of like it doesn't work almost.
Let's say GW drop a rules pack. Let's say GW go, okay, we're going to address this issue that everyone's asking for. Here is a tournament rules pack that we think tournaments should follow. Now they can't enforce that for the ITC. They can't enforce that for the ETC. They can't enforce that for Enter the Hellstorm. They can't enforce that for anything. So there's a possibility that GW could release this rules pack and go, there you go. And ITC could go, actually, one of the draws to our events is our rules pack, and we're sticking to it.
Yeah, if I can jump in there. I think one of the problems for Games Workshop is that I don't think anyone thinks they'd be very good at writing a competitive rules pack.
Darren has just said that in the chat.
Yeah, and that's why the ITC, that's why FLG have created the ITC and the ETC exist, because GW's competitive tournament rules pack is sort of non-existent, but their match play rules they don't really work in the competitive scene very well.
Yeah, Darren's just kind of covered that himself. You don't want GW being responsible for a tournament pack, given the track record of having to FAQ their own codexes 2 weeks after an event.
Yeah, that is also, but that's another issue entirely. I think there should be one tournament pack from GW, but it does have to be good.
Yeah, that's the thing.
If the ITC had its own different pack and they rewrote, and then GW wrote a pack and it was like, this is our pack, and it was like what ITC is now, everyone would be like, wow, that's really good. But
well, I think that's
they'll do
what
something
they're
weird.
doing, isn't it? By telling up to all these big events like Nova and Adepticon and LVO, they're looking at it, seeing what people are doing in tournaments, seeing how well those tournaments run, looking at any issues that arise to see if they can foresee issues they might have in their own pack. And I think GW are looking to try and create something like that, but it just needs to not be crap.
Have you been to the Heat, Mikey?
Yeah, so I've been to 3 heats. I went to the Heat 1 in the first Grand Tournament, and I've been to 2 in this season. I'm also attending Heat 2 of the next season. But you can definitely see that they're going to be trying to use Chapter Approved as their own tournament season, because they've decided to cram in 4 heats and a final in this year, even though the final of the previous season is March, sorry.
Yeah.
So they've crammed one in right at the end, and I think next year they're going to run either more heats or heats more spread out, and then have one final just before Chapter Approved, because you've been having like heats. Like I went to the very first Heat 1, which was just after the Codex Space Marines came out, and then like you had Chapter Approved, and then loads more Codexes come out, and then it was kind of like, what's really the best faction? No one really knows. Whereas by the time the next Heat season comes out, all the Codexes should be out for every army, and then obviously we might get new Codexes, who knows? But at least it'll be like one season. It's like we're all going to play the same missions for every Heat and the final. We're all going to have the same Codexes, all the same points and stuff like that. So yeah, it looks like they're trying to lean that way. It'd be interesting how that affects
how's the
potentially.
Event, is it good?
The event as a whole?
Yeah. So the pack good and the event as a whole good.
Well, the pack it's a bit weird because it's just like an Eternal War mission from Chapter Approved.
I've seen your pack, and I've seen the way it's run at the event, and I don't like it personally. I don't want to hammer GW because they've created this game that we love. But
I love GW.
The boards were looking really quite bare for scenery, and we know that large line sight blocking is massive in this edition. And the missions were really simple. And being the GW event, it is literally a no holds barred, everything goes, soup, Forge World, the lot, everything's allowed. Do what you want, we don't care.
All of it.
And that's a little bit, and that's clearly not good for tournament play. Otherwise, the ITC and ETC wouldn't have their own rules packs for events, right? Because that's why they have these rules packs, to fix these issues of GW's no holds barred approach.
Yeah.
So they don't bring.
So they try and take out too many They try and take out a lot of the variables, so you can see more about how the player does, rather than like, oh look, I've got a bad table. I'm playing against Tau. There's no terrain. I'm going to die. It's quite funny that, well, to be fair to GW and Warhammer World Team, that every Heat I've been to, the terrain's improved. So they are doing something. It's quite kind of slow for such, considering the terrain's made next door. But that's whatever. That's by the by.
As well,
but it's also quite funny that the ITC rule of blocking lower level would fix a lot of the Warhammer World's problems, but there you go. Again,
I think as well,
it's just another company.
It was quite funny that the games that were streamed from the last Heat, they showed like really good tables, really good.
Oh, that table's insane.
Yeah, and the lower tables are like Planet Bowling Ball.
Yeah,
every other table.
Exactly. The tables at the bottom look like Mikey P's head. There was just nothing.
Shiny, just glare.
Yeah, there was just nothing. We're going to welcome Shaggy from SM Battle Reports to the chat.
Hey, babe.
You guys should definitely go and check out smbattlereports.com. They do written battle reports like Old White Dwarf, and those things are awesome. So welcome, Shaggy. Darren has said that he went to GT and it really put him off 40k. I know that it put John off. And that's something that I think they've actively looked to do because of part of what you just said, Mikey. So I think one of the reasons why they're looking at chucking the heats and the finals within that chapter approved window is there are too many occasions, I think, where chapter approved or something's come out and it's knackered someone's list for a heat that they've been working on for the last 2-3 months or whatever. And that happened with John from Visicast, because he bought the old Super Chicken, the Forge World, Zeichin, Lord
Alphabet
of Change
Soup.
thing.
Yeah.
Because he saw
Atios Rao Kerez.
That's the one. Yeah, he saw it winning on the internet, so
good
he decided
effort.
to buy one. and then it went from 700 and something points to 1500 over the course of the chapter approved.
It got
just
mega
before
spanked.
Yeah. Which is just rubbish. It's just rubbish. And again, like this season, there's been 3 heats. The last one I went to was Heat 3, which is in December. Then we had chapter approved, was pre-order on the day of the tournament. And then you got Heat 4, which is like in 2 weeks, and then you got the finals in March, which doesn't make sense. So, and then they'll probably drop an FAQ in March, which will probably knacker that event as well. So,
yeah, I mean, if they keep up this rate of release, it's going to happen that way. It's just the way it's always going to happen, isn't it? So
yeah.
But they might be starting to sort of align it up a little bit more, right, and tidy it up and make it a bit neater.
I think that's the idea.
I
That's
think
why they crammed it in just
my
before
honest
chapter.
my honest opinion is when 8th launched, my honest opinion is that I don't think their intention was to focus this heavily on the tournament scene.
You don't?
No, I honestly don't. So I know that they brought out narrative, open, and match play. I get that, and I get they gave us 3 different ways of playing. But I don't think they intended to focus so heavily on the tournament scene, and I don't think that because the heats were jumbled up across FAQs and chapter approves, because there was no organised play type stuff really in the rulebook apart from some very minimal stuff.
Yeah.
Since then, we're seeing more and more leaks of organised play. If it's less than 2,000 points, you've got maximum 3 detachments. And I think what they've done as a company, and I applaud GW genuinely for this, I think they've looked at the tournament scene and seen that actually the tournament scene isn't just about hardcore gamers who want to get together and kick the snot out of each other for a weekend. It appeals to such a huge variety of people, and there's such a massive market for it. I think they've gone, this is an untapped mine here that we can either ignore and let people like ITC and ETC profit from, or we can embrace and start to align our calendar and start to align our events and start to align our releases, and then we're then directly supporting this tournament scene, and that's got to be positive for the company and for the players and for the tournament players and everyone.
It's a slice of a pie they can grab hold now.
Yeah, and the thing is, because people like ITC exist, which is obviously our topic for tonight, they're kind of doing the legwork for them, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of...
Well,
this is my concern, though. When we say about with GW releasing a tournament pack, this is my concern. They've got kind of, in my opinion, they've got kind of 2 ways they can do it. Way number 1 is they fly solo and they create their own tournament pack, right? And they just put something together and they chuck it out there, and it's probably going to be a bit shit, and it's probably going to need FAQ in 3.5 minutes after it's released. Or
3.5, that's generous.
yeah. Or what they can do is they can play it clever, which is what I actually genuinely believe they're doing at the moment. And they can keep looking at ITC events, they can keep looking at the LVOs and the Novas and stuff, and they can slowly gather this information and then chuck out a pack that they still have built, but it's basically bastardised stuff.
No, it's gonna be ITC crossed out and GW put on it.
You reckon?
Yeah.
It's going to be that much of a copy.
More or less.
Okay.
I mean,
The
when you
issue
look
is
at-
then is that if it's like a free pack that they do, then if people are, to be fair, I think the tournament scene is very large, obviously because the community is growing so fast these days. That if they put out a free pack, the people might stop buying like things like chapter approved and new Eternal War missions and stuff like that. Where realistically, if you're going to an event, you might need that one. So it might hurt book sales, which is never good for the company as a whole. I was going to touch on the point. I think you said that you don't think they plan for tournament play, but there's essentially in the rule book from day 1 there was plans for tournament play in there, because they say like they didn't have rule of 3, but they had like limited number of detachments for tournaments in a whole. So I think in 7th edition they didn't realise, but in 8th edition they were like, yeah, we need to kind of jump onto that.
Well, I think part of that is as well, obviously Warhammer TV's got a massive Twitch channel, and they're bringing revenues from that, and they're streaming games. And one of the things that they want to do is they want to turn Warhammer into an e-sport. And you've got Robert, the Honest Wargamer, who's commentating.
He's dubbed it a T-sport, a tabletop sports.
Tabletop
I really
sports.
like that. Yeah, T-sports.
That's what we're going to call it
Catching
from now on, T-Sports.
Yeah.
Next gen.
Copyright Honest Wargamer, that one though.
I was
Apologies.
chatting to
TM
Rob.
in that.
I was chatting to Rob today, and he's going to come on one of the podcasts.
Excellent.
He's a legend.
That.
He's such a great guy.
Definitely. Amazing guy for the community. He's doing such fantastic work.
And he set up the live streaming setup for Warhammer TV.
No.
Certainly did.
Set that up. Yeah, so he set up the cameras, he set up all that stuff. Rob is the guy who told Warhammer as a company, or Games Workshop as a company, you see these big YouTubers, you should send them stuff to review. He set all that up.
Yeah.
So, he's a great guy for the community.
What a guy. Can't wait to talk
What
about
a guy.
What a guy. But yeah, so that's a
He'll
massive...
definitely be more interested than Mikey as well.
So much better.
Oh, thank you.
But we
You
only
wanted
rip
to
because
bring
we
me on
love
and talk about nerdy stuff like tournaments and stuff.
Yeah.
It's your
I'm
own
interested in it.
Yeah, but I think GW basically they're seeing that they want to turn this into a T-sport, and that's going to be a massive revenue stream, and it's great publicity for them and all the rest of it.
Certainly
it's going to be big. So that's why they're looking at it so much.
This will be something that's really interesting to chuck out to the chat on Twitch. Do you guys think that as a T-sport, as we're calling it, on Twitch, this is something that you would be interested in? Would you be interested in watching? Because most of you guys will watch Battle Reports. That's almost guaranteed. I'd be very surprised if there's many of the however many 20-something viewers we've got right now who aren't Battle Report watchers on YouTube. I'd be very surprised. So I'd imagine most of you do. Would you be interested in watching live stuff? It's different, right, Mikey? You've streamed live games, and it is different because there's a lot more dead time you've got to fill with, I guess, kind of commentary or stuff. It's a lot harder to do than to stick out 40k battle reports.
Yeah.
Because
so
you have the magic of the editing sort of thing at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough because people think like, oh, I can live stream a game, I can stick a camera on and talk, but you've got to be entertaining for like 2.5 hours straight at least.
How have you done
whilst the game's on? Tough. It's really tough, honestly. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I was going back to the Honest Wargaming, I actually had the pleasure of joining him and helping out commentate and set up and run the Last Chance Open live stream in January.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think with Rob, he set like a really, really good standard of live streaming. He's like taking what he learned from GW and then just kind of like skyrocketed it with the production level, how he runs things and stuff like that. So he does it in really well. I think other live streams sometimes don't always capture that. They'll have a camera top down and they'll just talk over the top, where it can get a little bit dry and a little bit boring. But I think with live streaming, if you have really good commentary that people who know the game, who know what they're talking about, and are keeping a good eye on what's happening and are telling people what's happening, I think it could be, as you've said, it could be the future of battle reports.
My honest belief, now I have not got the ability or the technology to do it at the moment. I mean, that's evident from the start of this bloody stream when I couldn't even get my mics working, right? Yeah. But maybe in the future, I think Twitch and live streaming content like this, and I know we're streaming to a tiny audience right now, and you consider some of the views we've had on YouTube, I think this, and building this audience and building this regular engagement with people that want to talk to the channel, I honestly believe is the future. And I believe that live streaming games, potentially in the future, is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It's actually how Hellstorm Wargaming started. That's how we actually set up as. We were a Twitch live streaming 40k channel.
Okay.
It was only like a year in that we started YouTube. Basically, we used to set up every Tuesday night. We used to go down to our local gaming store. I used to take my computer, all the live streaming gear, all the terrain, all the armies and stuff like that. Spend like 30 minutes setting up, panicking, stressing, live streaming until like 11:30 midnight, and then packing all down and then going home. We used to do that every week. So we don't do that anymore, fully enough, because I got fed up with it. It was too much. I did it for a year.
Too many live technology issues before it all even gets going. And stuff, right? Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah, I'm about to find out, I think, the hard way.
Yeah.
To be fair, we'd have had no issue tonight if you weren't dialing in and you weren't whinging that you couldn't hear the other two, because that's what knackered our microphones. Anyway, there's some interesting points in the chat. Viking XDK, watching a live game from competitive events helps teach people how to think about their next moves. That's one of the reasons why I think live streaming will be big. So one of the things you kind of lose from battle reports, I love battle reports, I watch them, obviously, but one of the things you sort of lose is what is commonly known as the movement phase, but could probably also be dubbed as the thinking phase. Okay? Because before you start to move your models, or whilst you're in the process of moving your models, that's when you're thinking about your whole battle round and what you're going to do.
It's when you should be thinking about your whole battle. We get
Unless
plenty
it's Brom,
of my
is that what you're trying to say?
phases on camera midway through my shooting phase.
Yeah,
but,
so that's,
you should be.
That's what I dub the thinking phase, and watching people formulate that plan. And sometimes, this is why I think live streaming can be done a little bit better as well. Sometimes having the ability to go to that person's ear and talk to them about their plan. What are you thinking?
Well, I think that's dangerous, because what you can't do when you're streaming a game is actually have direct contact with the players, because you can influence them in some way. And that's very difficult to control that influence.
Very much so.
But that's where the commentating comes in and becomes really important, because they need to be very experienced and understand the game to a really kind of intimate level, so that they can convey that to the audience.
Yeah.
And what they need to aim for, and what I think Rob is aiming for really, is to try and be able to pitch a game of 40k via the commentary to a less experienced audience, so they can understand what's going on without necessarily having the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a couple of people in the chat, Andy Byrne and Wolfbot, who've both basically said, who've both basically said they wouldn't really be interested in watching live 40k. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that this replaces battle reports.
No.
Battle reports have still got a massive sort of draw from people because of that narrative aspect and that ability to use a battle report to simply tell a story. But if you were to watch a live game of 40k, you're not watching it for that story, are you really? You're not watching it for that narrative.
You're watching the competition. It's like football, right?
Yeah, you're watching essentially an elaborate chess game, and you're watching two masterminds, dare I use the term, fighting it out and playing tactically against each other in what is essentially elaborate chess.
Yeah, it's a contest.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'd be interesting.
It would change the way I play a game, definitely.
Massively.
Currently, I chat a lot to my... Why are you doing that? What are you doing over there? And asking loads of stupid questions. And then I don't know if I want that.
I'll love to play, bro. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Why are you moving the Leviathan round and aiming at me?
See, this is an interesting point that Harvey N has brought up in the Twitch chat. I would think I would only enjoy watching live play if there were high stakes. So that's interesting. That's like people that watch live poker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's big money in it. Yeah. And if this continues, if this beast that is Warhammer and Warhammer 40k and GW continues to grow the way it's growing, I don't see why some of the tournaments wouldn't end up having bigger prize support in the future.
Yeah, well, there are already games that have got thousands of dollars on the line. Well, there will be the LVO. They've got a prize pot of five,
like 10k or something like that, $10,000.
Yeah, it's quite a bit, you know. It's a serious chunk of money, and there will come a time at the LVO where two people are playing a game, and there is a sizable chunk of money on the table.
Yeah. So I have also noticed, obviously, that we have disappeared off on a massive tangent again.
Yeah. Bring it back.
Back
bring
in
it back.
we go.
So I'm going to bring it back to the questions because it's important we answer our patrons' questions. If you guys don't know, we do have a Patreon page. It will be linked in the video description below on YouTube. Click it, come and follow us, come and join our Discord community. Really busy. Loads of people in there, lots of questions, lots of good hobbies.
Really good. I enjoy it.
You enjoy it, because you pay for us on Twitch.
I know.
And you come and join us in our Discord, and it's awesome. So you get to come and chat to Mikey as well on Discord, which is a bonus. You get to come and chat to Mikey and Mikey and Mikey. So just to really confuse people, there's 4 of us on
trio of doom.
and there's 3 Mikeys.
The land of Michael.
So we're going to jump on to the next question.
Sure.
Again, has a minor sort of link to what we were just talking about. This came from Richie, who I don't think is on and watching. But Richie says, does the ITC have any relevance to narrative players? And if they don't, why does it have such a huge influence on the rules? I don't think ITC does have any relevance to narrative at all.
No. It's about competition play. It's in the name. It's tournament circuit, and by definition, tournament is competition to find out who's the best, rather than narrative. I think Mikey P touched on the topic earlier, that the kind of good thing, but also problem is it affects narrative play so much is because FLG are play testers of the game.
Yeah.
They obviously help decide what happens with codexes. They help decide. They test out rules. They say if it's good or bad, or whether it needs nerfing or needs buffing. And also because of the big tournaments that do happen, and let's say janky things that happen, it is quite a big issue. So they want to create a competitive game, but they also want to create like a fair game. Because like one of the big things that happened was the charge phase and flying, which was kind of like a really touchy subject, let's say. But what you saw was in big competitive events, people using the ruling for it to their massive advantage. Deep striking smash captains on top of like 25-inch buildings, and then because they're miles away from anything, and then having a 0-inch charge to a unit that's on the ground floor because you ignore the distance when you move. So, as an example, that's why it affects stuff, because these things are brought out more in events because people have to use every rule to their maximum power level to be able to win in the game.
But the issue there is, so I have we've covered this before. For 0-0 problems that needed to be fixed, right? That rule was being abused at a tournament level.
Yeah, there's better ways they could have done it, but that's the way they did.
and even because the way the rule was written, even in a narrative game, that could be abused, and it could be unsort of sportsmanlike, I guess. But some people will do it. But the fix was crap. And that's
it was. They should have just said measure the distance.
Do you think?
Oh, you've started him off again now.
Do you think in this specific? This is relevant.
I'm going to hold.
This is relevant to Richie's question. Do you think in this specific? So let's take the specific circumstance of the fly keyword change. Do you think when GW dropped their fix in chapter approved of the FAQ, whichever it was, do you think they consulted Frontline Gaming and the ITC about that specific fix, or do you think they came up with that fix themselves?
Well, from what I heard from another podcast, which was it was a specific situation with Juice from the Long War podcast. Okay. It's one of the guys on there. He did this exact thing with the Smash Captain deep striking 0-inch while being on a huge building. And I think it was Robin Crudis, one of the rules writers, actually saw that happen and was like, oh, you can't do that. And then Juice was like, why not? And then he kind of showed him exactly how it worked. And then this was at Nova as well. This is the time of the magic box of having a flyer in it as well. So 2 weird rulings come out of that. But then 2 weeks after that, that was when the fly rule got changed. So I think that was because someone saw that and was like, actually, no, that's really, really bad, which it was pretty bad, to be fair. Yeah. Smash Captains were dominant. Lots of tall buildings are really good in ITC and those sort of missions because you want line of sight blocking to make an interesting game, so they'll have them everywhere. It was just getting abused everywhere. So whilst it wasn't a brilliant fix, it's the fix we've got. Yeah. So I think they should have gone measure the distance base to base, but whatever.
Yeah. That was quite funny, that instance you mentioned there with Juice and Robin Cruddas, because he was like, no, that's not how it works. And then Robin was saying, yeah, it is.
It is what that's
because Juice didn't know that he wrote the rule.
Yeah,
he was arguing with the guy who wrote the rule. So
always
rules is written, not intent, unless you're talking to the guy who knows what the intent was because he wrote it.
Yeah, that was the intent, but that's not how it's written. Same with things like lightning fast reactions and rotate iron shields, and how targeting worked. Because before you used to technically choose your target
without declaring your weapon.
Yeah, so you could go, I'm going to shoot this, and this, and they go, let's say within a Crusader, for example, they go, okay, I'm going to lightning fast this Hemlock, and then you go, okay, I'm going to shoot a heavy stubber at it, and then shoot all my big guns at everything else, because screw you.
Did that. We literally did that. So we played a doubles game at No Retreat 7, and there was me and Ian Jewell from, goddamn, what's his YouTube channel?
Imperium Gaming.
Thank you, Imperium Gaming. Sorry, Ian.
Legend.
There was me and Ian Jewell versus Winters and Henny. We were basically playing Chaos versus Imperium, and we did it to Winters. Winters took Knights to No Retreat 7, and we did it a few times where Ian would stand there with his Leviathan or with his Spartan and go, right, that and that and that. Which Knight are you rotating on? Because you can only rotate on one, because that's the rules for match play. And Winters said, well, what are you shooting? I'm not telling you that, because we didn't need to. That was the rule at the time.
And, but that's why ITC and stuff like that affect the rules so much, is because GW is so heavily involved in watching these games and keeping an eye on what armies are doing well for balance play. They find out these weird rules and then they change them in the ways that they do.
It's all part of the playtesting phase. It's just kind of live rather than behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a reason they're at these big events. It's because it's to keep an eye on weird rules.
Totally.
Okay, so we've kind of covered that. It does have a massive effect, I think, on the rules. It doesn't really touch narrative players, apart from some of those little rules changes, which I think they do badly. John B asks, we've covered quite a few of John B's questions. He says, this will be a quick-fire one. Quick-fire Mikey question. What's the one thing you would change in regards to ITC?
Magic boxes.
Okay, well, that's an easy fix, right? Because you've done that for your event as well.
Bin them off,
Yeah, they're just weird. They create non-interaction, which I don't like. Something where you can do something where your opponent can't stop it happening, where it's not in the list building step, it's not in any step, it's just because of the terrain that they've got, or because of the board you've rocked up to. Don't think it's fair, so...
Yeah, I like that.
There you
go. I got another one from Dylan. What's Mikey's thoughts on the scoring system, and how does he go about preparing for upcoming events? That's interesting.
Okay, so I've touched on it slightly, but I'll just reiterate some points. The scoring system is good and bad, because it's really... I think I'd dub it binary 40k, because it takes it really back to basics. You're not really playing for any objective for any reason. You're just grabbing an objective, and you're not really killing units for a specific reason. You just got to kill units, which get you points. So it kind of takes those back to basics. And then secondaries are good and bad because they kind of like tailor against list, which is good as well because it makes the game interesting. So if you've prepared for certain armies, or like if you're playing against a certain army, you can prepare for that. So there's never like rock up to a table. It's like, oh, I can't score any points because he's brought Imperial Knights and I'm not ready for that. Whereas you can go, okay, I'm going to take Titan Slayer because that gets me loads of points, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of losing my train of thought. Repeat the question, then I'll remember.
Oh, God. What do you think about... where is it? What's Mikey's...
How do I prepare? There we go.
Yeah.
How do I prepare?
On the score system, how do you prepare?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So as I said, what you have to do with your list building step is prepare for what you're going to be playing against. So obviously Imperial Knights are super popular because they're really cool models, they're really good in the game, and they're quite easy to use. I'd say you just rock up and stomp on things and shoot them if you can. Eldar are always quite popular, so super fast units. And obviously Drukhari are popular because they have the staying power. So you kind of have to prepare for those three armies like you would at any event. But also you kind of have to think about those secondaries which are available and trying to tailor your list against them or for them. For example, in a list, I always take super fast units that can fly around because I like to take recon because it's quite easy to do. So again, recon is one of the secondaries that you choose where if you have a unit in every quadrant of the board, you get a point at the end of your turn. So you have lots of little units that can jump around, hide behind terrain, and not really get killed very much, but also score your points every turn, whilst also holding objectives, which is usually what happens. So it's kind of like prepare to face anything, but especially Imperial Knights and Eldar. Currently, anyway. And also think about the secondaries when you're writing a list. If you're going to take 120 cultists, someone is going to take the Reaper at you, and they are probably going to get that point because it's just killing models. So maybe think if you don't want that to happen, just think about other things. As I said, like if you're going to take Knights, be careful which ones you take because they might give away too many points. Like I like to take Leviathans. I run 2. Reason being is because I don't really have any other bigger units in my army. And also, if they want to go big game hunter, it's like, cool, you're going to kill my Leviathans and get 2 points, but you're only going to get 2 points rather than the maximum of 4 for each secondary.
Right, yeah, okay.
So, there you go.
That's interesting. See, when I prepare for events at the moment, I don't think I put my big failing, and it's definitely a failing, is I don't think I put that much sort of thought into things like primary and secondary. So I'll definitely have in mind the sort of things I could be facing. So things like fast Eldar lists, flyers, things like Alatok, Hemlock, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've just realised that chat box looks awful. We're going to kill that. Alatok, Hemlocks and stuff like that. And I also sort of think about Imperial Knights and stuff. And I don't focus enough, perhaps, on the mission type. I think that's where it really falls down for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't... So until tonight, I had zero understanding as to how ITC missions even worked, and I've got a list for your event, but I'm just going to rock up and see what I can do with it.
Yeah, why not?
Because
sometimes that's all you need to do. I mean, it depends how serious you want to take the event. If you want to take the event as what it is, it's a gaming weekend away with the lads with a few beers, then just turn up with whatever and just. But expect that, and I think events sometimes people struggle to manage their expectations. They might take a list that they think's really good because they beat the friend with it, but you're going to be playing against a lot of different people with probably stuff that you haven't seen before, and it's kind of just preparing for that. As soon as you start playing a lot of events, if you can start preparing for those things, like working in like, okay, I'm going to take this army because it's got some really good units, and then you might get trashed every game, and sometimes that does happen because it's 40k at the end of the day, right? It's a dice game. If you roll really well, or you roll really badly, they roll really well, you're going to get trashed. But once you get your head around that, and then you can start preparing. You can start thinking, okay, I'm going to start optimizing my list. My list struggled to grab objectives, and maybe I need some faster units. Or my list struggled to kill lots of little units or lots of like horde units like orcs, so I need to take more rate of fire and stuff like that. So you just got to kind of get into that. As soon as you get into that competitive mindset of where you think my list was good, but how can I change it? Maybe I do have to drop that really cool model that I like.
And things like, BCP and 40kstats.com will help you with that, because you can look and see what things are popular and what things are doing well.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree. So just do a little bit of research, Yeah. People start saying, oh, it's a net list, but also it's only a net list because people are doing really well with it. So
that's what Tactics say. Chapter Tactics said, take a net list. If you go in early, take a net list because you've got a higher percentage chance of your list not screwing you early. So
yeah, exactly.
There's a bit about should do it and shouldn't do it, but you're at least with the meta.
Well, net lists exist for a reason, though, right?
Yeah, it's about forcing the maths your way.
Yeah. The problem. This is one of the problems. One of the main problems I have is accepting the fact that unit that's really narrative and really cool is actually crap, and that other unit that's not that narrative and not that cool is the one you should probably spam. And
sadly,
how many times have you and I had the cultist conversation, right? I just won't take 80 cultists in a 1,000 Suns list.
Yeah. I keep telling you to take them because it depends on the list building, right? And they are in your list in particular. I don't know if you reveal it, so I won't go into too much details. But like in your list, that fills a really good problem, and that's kind of what you got to do. You got to see what your list can do, what it can't do, and what is gonna get. People will look for loopholes or problems with your list and they'll exploit that. So, for example, in your particular list, having 80 cultists plugs a gap without being able to soup, for example. So,
yeah, okay. So that's how we prepare, roughly. This question is a very interesting one. This was from Simon, and I think this one links heavily into the rules pack stuff we were talking about before, which is quite interesting. He says, with Games Workshop's continued interaction with the player base, do you think ITC will be needed in the next few years? So basically what he's suggesting is if Games Workshop continue to support events like this, they continue to get involved in events and tournaments, they continue to release organised play, rules, etc., will ITC then die because simply it won't be needed?
No, it's quite an interesting question. The thing is, GW are at the same time relying on the guys at FLG and the ITC to test the game for them.
Yeah.
So whilst they have such a heavy influence on the game itself, I think it'll thrive rather than like die down. Maybe if GW pulled that from them and they were just some guys in the US kind of just playing around doing what they like, then maybe it would struggle. Because I think a big problem was during 7th edition, ITC wasn't popular in this country. And the reason for that was because they had their own massive FAQ, because GW didn't have one at the time, and fixed problems, but they were all fixed it in ways differently to what the ETC did, because they also had a big FAQ. And the problem was it was you could see it was very opinionated depending who wrote it. So they might rule one thing one way which benefits an army, which nerfs another, and then the ETC would do it a different way.
Yeah.
So whilst they were doing that, the ITC wasn't very popular, and the ETC was. For some reason, I guess it's because it's closer to home, being the European Team Championships. But now that ITC kind of almost write the rules in a way, as I said, they do influence them very heavily. That is really popular because it's essentially like pretty much natural 40k. It's just in this strange mission scenario.
It's much more natural 40k than it ever used to be, right? That's the key.
Exactly, yeah. Except for with the wobbly model thing, which is essentially, quickly explained, wobbly model is a new rule that they've added. If you charge something but you can't place your base, you pretend to be there, so you can attack stuff in combat that's on a multi-level ruin.
Didn't
for example,
remove that in an FAQ?
Yes, they did, and then ITC wrote that back in. And this magic box thing that we've brought up a few times, which is the enclosed ruin. Because they've only got those two rules currently that kind of like make up the rules as they go along. It's a lot more natural. So that it's a natural version of 40k whilst playing a made-up mission. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. See, the big thing for me with ITC as well that GW currently don't have, and I don't think they have any or show any signs of ever including, is rankings.
Yeah, and it's the collection of the stats as well, and the formal way that they do that. So although the question is kind of a bit misnomer in so much that GW can't currently do what the ITC does with regard to those rankings and how they collect all the information and the data and stuff through BCP. So even if ITC weren't writing their own rules packs, they were using a GW's rules pack, they'll still be there producing that service for collecting the information.
Take it all the way back, then really they should be able to do like your list building in an app. Battlescribe should be theirs.
So like GW, I mean, they have an Age of Sigmar list building app, right? That exists.
Yeah, it was another company, War Scroll Builder, built it, and then GW bought it from them, and then they just basically he still builds it, but they host it on their site.
Yeah.
And
so it's still dubbed War Scroll Builder.
They had a 40k one, but
well, they've confirmed GW.
They have combat roster currently, which builds lists with power level, and you can't put anything in detachments. But whatever.
I mean, GW have stated their intent that they do want to make combat roster a proper Battlescribe-esque.
Cool. Right. We're on the home stretch now, people. We've got the last few questions.
Okay.
This one I think is for me, it's a really easy answer. This one from Dylan. Is the tournament scene good for the hobby?
Now, I think it is.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Because I think if you're going to have players that are going to exploit issues with the game, it's going to be those at tournaments, right? And that's why we have some of these rules that are coming out and some of these fly changes and stuff. No matter how good or bad I think the change is, the only reason why we know that change needed to happen was because of the tournament scene. So I think the tournament scene, my only concern with the tournament scene is the potential to ruin certain narrative stuff. For example, soup. So we've all agreed that soup is to some extent it's bad for tournaments, and yet I don't want to get rid of soup altogether because I think it's good for narrative stuff. So I think the tournament scene is a massive positive as long as when people are writing these new rules in, they factor in the fact that this is tournaments and not everybody.
It brings it into the public's eye as well. Tournaments is making it like well known. Like, there's it was on the news recently. Like actually, people in Games Workshops on BBC show were like on Friday.
Yeah, it was Radio 2 on the Jeremy Vine show the other day,
right,
Friday.
Exactly.
Did you listen? Did you guys listen to that?
No, I was at work.
it was dreadful.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well,
but it's
still,
obviously
it's
in
still there though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's amazing the fact that they had that stage in the first place. There was also an article in The Guardian recently, I think.
Yeah.
There's been other contact from media sources to other social media channels and stuff as well that I know about. So it's definitely a focus in the public eye now, which is good.
Yeah, and what Brom says is exactly right. It's great publicity for the hobby and for GW, and the more publicity, the more people come into the hobby, and it's the big tournaments at things like Nova and Adepticon, where they're not just 40k tournament events. They're events for all kinds of tabletop gaming. So people who play other systems also get to see 40k being played, and they join the hobby.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
It helps kill the stigma overall of tabletop gaming, right? Because obviously, like 10 years ago, it was like really frowned upon, like, oh, you're a nerd, you paint models and stuff like that. You got toy soldiers.
Yeah.
But like now,
We're
it's
still
like
nerds,
it's
mate.
really in the
Don't kid
spotlight,
yourself.
which is really good.
Yeah. Mikey's right. We are still definitely nerds.
Well, we are still nerds, but I mean, people used to like say it in a smirky way, and
I'm
you didn't
sat
have.
here.
Now nerds are cool, right?
I'm sat
Yeah,
here.
nerds are cool guys.
After 12-hour shift on a Sunday, in front of a green screen on a computer, live streaming to 22 people talking
about toy
models.
soldiers.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely still a nerd, and
Wait,
I'm really quite happy
And I've
with
got
that.
Ben Kenobi.
If they didn't have this many people and this much publicity, then we wouldn't be having new models, and we would still be on our third Calgar, not fourth.
Don't start that one.
Oh,
Let's not start
why
that
would you
rant.
do that?
Let's not start that rant. Right. We're going to
Start
wrap the questions up with a final question, which is definitely directly for you, Mikey, and you alone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
First
God.
of all, we'll say a massive thank you to Angus for the resub, legend.
What a guy! What a guy!
What a guy. But this is a question that's just for you. This came from a guy in Discord who's called Chapter Master Ridley. I don't think he's actually a Chapter Master.
No,
I'm
he's
not sure.
No, I met him yesterday.
Have you asked him?
He's
No,
a
I
marine.
haven't.
Marine
Well,
man,
how do you know?
Ridley Valiant's not even his real name.
It's in the name, so I'd be surprised.
I met him yesterday.
And his question
fantastic.
is,
Yeah.
what about the Blood Ravens made you pick them as your go-to chapter?
Oh, that is a good question. I do get asked this question a lot, actually.
Is it because they're kind of like Thousand Suns?
No. So because one, I will nip that in the bud. It is rumored and hinted, but it never confirms that they are actually Thousand Suns.
That sounded rehearsed.
Also, it's quite funny that Blood Ravens are red and they have green purity seals, and I'm red-green colorblind, which is also quite funny. But there you go. There's an interesting
That
fact.
must be why you painted Gulliman the wrong colour, right?
Red-green colorblind. I know what blue is, but I chose against it. However, so in 2005, obviously THQ released Dawn of War, the PC game.
Yeah.
And I bought that game and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, playing through the story, loving the narrative. I think it's probably one of my favorite video games. And then I was in school at the time. I was like 12, I think.
About 4
Yeah, I
years
was
ago,
12.
4 years ago, people.
Yeah, I'm 25, everyone. So I went into the library after school on the Monday, and I saw my friend, and he was playing with an Ultramarines army against a friend with a Chaos army, and I was like, oh, whoa, these figures are really cool. And he was like, oh yeah, it's Warhammer. I was like, oh my god, I played the video game. And he was like, are these the models from the video game? He's like, no, the video came after. And then he explained it all. And he was like, and then I was like, I went to GW, and I was like, oh my god. And then I bought Lord of the Rings.
Oh dear. Oh, it was all going so well.
However, so I painted those for like a month, and then I painted some goblins and stuff like that. But then
These are too small. They're going in the bin.
Yeah, it's like, this is terrible. I'm going to go buy some Space Marines. And then, that's when I bought some Space Marines. I actually bought Chaos Space Marines as well. And then, so my first chapter was, I painted them as Blood Ravens because I painted them as the video game, because that's what got me into the hobby, was the video game. So that's why I like Blood Ravens. And also, I've been painting them for that long, and I really love the fluff. And I know the fluff is, compared to other chapters, Legions and stuff, it's fairly weak. But I think because originally I was a video gamer, and I've just fell in love with it ever since. So.
I for one salute your commitment.
Yeah, I've actually got my first Blood Raven. I don't have because I did sell it. I got out of the hobby when I was like 15. Being a teenager.
You're working down the mines, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I have the very first Blood Raven I ever painted, and he's just down there somewhere. So
Right, in the bin.
no, he's underneath a Reaver.
Yeah. Which is where Blood Ravens belong.
Yeah.
These Reavers. Okay.
The original Assault on Black Reach models.
Well,
Because that was the first box that I got.
we have to give you a massive thank you for coming and joining us tonight and talking about ITC.
And taking
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. It's been honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure if you're happy to, this won't be the last time we'll see Mikey because he'll chat hobby forever like we will. So I'm sure we'll have you on again, and I've said I'll come and join you if you want to as well, and all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, I hope so.
It might be that we stick together. We were thinking about maybe sticking together a regular competitive based podcast as well. So
yeah, we'll see what people think. See how if you do like it, then let us know. We might be able to sort something out.
Yeah, so a huge thank you for coming. Now we'll go into the formal goodbye part, which is for the wonderful YouTube video, because we have to look mildly professional, because the start of it was so crap. So obviously check out Mikey and his channel. It's Hellstorm Wargaming on YouTube. We'll link it in the video description below on our channel, just because it's nice to do that for you. They've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and you've got a website, right? Do you want to tell them about the website?
Yeah, so I got hellstormwargaming.co.uk, which is similar to deploymentzone.te, where it's got we kind of host all of our videos there. So we have free ones that we put out on YouTube, and then we've got the premium service where you get, basically we alternate releases. So we'll have one on YouTube, then we'll have one on the website. We also have blogs and stuff, so there's quite a few of us that write fluff-based blogs. There's one from Alex about why Lorgar did nothing wrong and stuff like that, but it's really fun. So yeah, if you can, check it out. And obviously check out
in the Twitch chat by The Claw, Mikey currently has a nicer beard. I mean, it's not necessarily a nicer colour, but maybe a nicer beard. So yeah, check out Mikey, check out his channel. It's good stuff. We watch it sometimes when there's nothing else on, right?
Yeah. We run out of other things to watch.
Yeah.
What should I eat?
When I'm no longer watching,
I'll go there for reviews.
When I'm no longer watching Gogglebox, I then might put on Hellstorm. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us, buddy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
That's good background.
Yeah,
thank you again for having me, dude.
Mikey has already alluded to. We've also got the website www.deploymentzone.tv. That's a collaboration website for me and Winters, where we stick out battle reports every single Tuesday. And there's Winter's top tips, and there's sit and talks between him and I called DZHQ, and there's the big debates.
Galmec incident,
which is really cool. The Galmec incident, which is a narrative campaign that Winter's put together. I'll be honest with you,
really fun.
There's loads going on that website at the moment. I'm not even sure we can handle it, but there is currently a competition as well. So if by the 1st of March you're a deploymentzone.tv subscriber, you have the chance to win one of 3 6x4 foot battle mats. So
fantastic!
Come and join the website. Come and give it a go. I think it's $4.99 a month at the moment. Is that the current price? And you have a chance to win a battle mat. So join us there. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you missed the live stream. We are trying to hit Twitch partner. I need an average of 75 viewers a stream.
Long way to go.
Yeah, we're on about 23, I think, for this one. It's
yeah,
better than 2,
right.
right?
Yeah,
I'm quite happy with that.
Somewhere.
I'm really chuffed with the audience and the interaction. So, if you have watched us on YouTube and you think you'd like to be involved in this and have a chat in the chat section, because there's loads of guys talking away about the hobby that we haven't even been able to sort of read out on screen, then come and join us on Twitch. Twitch, you'll find us at Warhammer Liam, because someone already stole my name, which is horrific, isn't it? Someone
stole your name for you.
Yeah, someone stole Warhammer, so I had to be Warhammer Liam, which is a little bit sad because there's 2 Mikeys to the right of me. So come and find us on Twitch. Don't forget, if you are watching us on Twitch and you have Amazon Prime, you can link your Amazon Prime account, and then there is a way, and I'm going to do a tutorial because apparently it's really hard. There's a way where you can link your Amazon Prime to your Twitch, and then you can subscribe to the Twitch channel through Amazon Prime.
It's not as obvious as it was meant to be, I think.
Yeah.
But as soon as you find it, it's easy.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Brom knows Brom knows how to do it now. He's worked it out. And basically what that means is you get a free subscription because you're Amazon Prime, and we get paid and it costs you nothing. So chuck us that, or chuck it to Hellstorm, depends on who you prefer. He's currently got the bigger ginger beard, so
Cutie.
No, yeah, I've got to look after you, mate. You're a nice guy.
Yeah. Thank you.
So there's loads of stuff. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook for Warhammer, and both for Deployment Zone. So, and there's starting to become a bit of a back catalogue of these podcasts. Yeah. And I encourage you to watch the first 2, just because it will show you how much shitter they were than this one.
Yeah. We're getting better. We're getting better.
This one
I was laughing. AP Burns said, "Good chat, guys. Far more professional than I'm used to, though. It was a shock."
I told you this is going to be our bread and butter, and it's going to be the future. And we had lots of we had a bit of a dry patch, didn't we, for content, right? So Mikey and I got together and we figured that if we could stick out a podcast like this where we chat to people live every Sunday, it takes me minimum time to edit it and stick on YouTube. At least we've got a regular stream of decent sit and talk content for the site.
Yeah,
so Hope you guys
Probably
enjoyed it.
half an hour of stress before you start. That's all.
Half an hour of stress, yeah. Probably would have been less time if I'd have been able to test it properly last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, shame that.
We won't talk about that, Mikey, will we? We won't talk about what happened to Mikey last
No,
night.
that's
He was
not.
supposed to be testing with me at 8:30 at night and instead fell asleep on his desk.
Nappy time.
Fell asleep on
I was
his
building
desk.
terrain.
Busy making terrain.
Yeah.
So thanks very much everyone for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope to see you in the next one. It will be 8 o'clock on Sunday next week. And we'll speak to you soon, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you in the next one.
Love you, bye.
Bye.